All right, now we're ready to begin the painting. I've transferred my drawing onto the canvas. I've used some brown paint to tone the canvas, just like we do with a typical wipeout, okay? Um, and now I'm ready to start adding in the thicker layers of paint. So on my palette here, I've arranged it with, as usual, with my kind of warmer colors on one side of the palette, my two reds, my two yellows. I've got some white and black and brown in the corners, and along this side I have some darker, cooler colors. I have a blue and I have a purple that I've mixed up. So I'm going to use these colors for this uh, portrait painting here. Okay. Now, just like we talked about in the still life, we're going to be kind of thinking about the face in terms of two different colors at first. One color for the light side, the side that's in the light, that the light is shining on, and then another color for the shadow side, all the shadow shapes that you see on the face. And you'll do the same thing for other parts of the portrait. So for instance, the shirt here, there are parts of it that are in light, and there are parts of it that are in a darker shadow. So I can think of it in terms of two different colors. One color for the light areas, one color for the shadow areas. Okay. With the background, you typically can choose whatever color you'd like, but typically you want it to be something that's going to contrast with the face. So in the face, there's going to be a lot of warm, neutral, kind of earth tone, brown sort of colors. So it makes sense for the background to be maybe more of a cooler color. Um, in terms of where you begin, you can really start anywhere you'd like. Okay. I will sometimes start with getting the background color in first. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm just going to mix in kind of a grayish color. So I'm going to take some white paint and a little bit of black, maybe some blue and purple to make it a little cooler, and kind of mix that together. Now when I look at my photo here, I notice how in general this background here is a little bit darker than the light side of my face. It's a little bit lighter than the shadow side of my face. So I'm going to do a color that has a value similar to that. I'm not going to be trying to draw any of the details back here. It's just going to be a solid color. And I don't worry about running over the lines. I can always come back and clean that up later. I'm keeping the paint fairly thick at this point, trying to cover over that initial tone. Okay. I might also at this point put in the color of the hat and the shirt as well, but I think I'll move on to the face. since that's the part that gives people the most trouble. Now, as you start to mix the color of the skin, the important thing isn't so much that you get the color exactly right. What you want to be more careful to do is get the right value, meaning the lightness or darkness, right? Like how light is the light side of the face. It'll be different for everybody depending upon the value of your skin. How dark is the shadow, right? Try to get the color as close as you can, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, as you're seeing this video here, the light side looks really, really kind of light. It doesn't look that light in the photo. It looks, in the photo, if I bring it closer, you can maybe see a clear sense here. It has a more of an orangish kind of tint to it. I can see a lot of detail that you're not seeing in this video. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by trying to mix up a color for the light side of the face here. I'll kind of block that in, not worrying about every little detail. And then once I get that in place, I will move on to the shadow side of the face and get that blocked in. Now, the way that I do that is you can kind of start with your neutral brown and then ask yourself, how does this need to change to look like what I'm seeing in my photograph? Okay, certainly, and if I'm going to start with the light side here, certainly this is much too dark for my the value of my skin. So I'll use a little bit of brown, but it's going to be a lot of white paint for me. But now if I mix the white with the brown, it's going to have a very kind of cold gray brownish look to it. And when the light is hitting your face, it'll tend to make the colors warmer. Okay. As I look at this photograph in real life here, it has a lot of kind of orange color to it. So I'm going to now try to warm up this brown by adding in some things like yellows and reds. And again, the color doesn't need to be perfect, but I want to get the value pretty close. Okay, so that looks close enough for me. I'll be going through this again and adding a lot of detail, so I will adjust the color as I go. But if I can just kind of get the basic color and value in place, that's where I want to start. All right, so I'm getting this blocked in. Now I can move on to the shadow shapes that I see. They're quite dark in this photograph here. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll use this light color and I'll just like the shadows in our still lives, I'll darken it by adding darker, cooler colors to it. I can also add a little bit more of the neutral brown into it, but things like purple will darken the color and make it cooler, because remember, the color in the shadows tends to be cooler in color. All right. So I've got this shadow color mixed. I think I want a little more brown into it, but looking pretty good. I'm not really even worried about covering over some of the lines I've drawn. I'm just trying to block in this basic shadow shape. Forgot to add the light color to that ear there. I'll have to go back and do that later. The shadow here cast by the hat on the face. Okay. One thing to look at as you are adding these shadows is the edges of the shadows, and ask yourself, is this a sharp, crisp edge, or is it more of a soft, blurry edge? Up here, it's much more of a softer edge. All right, so I'm getting this kind of blocked in here. It's going to look a little bit overly simplified at first. I'm going to go ahead and continue to block in these colors, and I'll post a photograph of this when I'm done.